Our U.S. military has fought bravely and strongly to defeat ISIS and to combat the threats of international terrorism. Recently, President Trump declared that he was withdrawing U.S. military from northern Syria and from Turkey. The ramifications for this are catastrophic. Ultimately, he has left our allies, the Kurds, in ruin. He has left them to die and to suffer. Our Kurdish allies have fought with us since 2011 to defeat the tyranny of the Syrian government and to combat the threat of ISIS. They have been resilient, they have been strong, and they have fought with us for over a decade. And now they are left in ruin. Today, my speech will address the history of the Kurdish and the U.S. alliance. It will address the conflict in the Middle East between the Sunni and the Shiite tribes, the Muslim tribes, and it will also address the future ramifications of withdrawing U.S. forces from Syria and Turkey. Now, to begin, I'd like to give a background of the U.S. alliance with the Kurdish people. In 2011, Syria was in the middle of a civil war. Their military dictator, Saddam Hussein, was committing mass genocide for the ethnic minority group known as the Kurds. The Kurds are an ethnic group of people that compose of 30 million people in the Middle East. They're mostly of Sunni faith, and I'll get into the difference between Sunni and Shiite later. Now, in this fight, the U.S. coalition teamed up with the Kurds to overthrow Saddam Hussein, and it was successful. Leading up to the battle, the U.S. had since neglected the Kurds and left them on their own. Since 2011, our Kurdish allies have fought with the U.S. military to defeat ISIS, and they have been loyal companions ever since. Up until this recent decision by our president to remove foreign aid and to leave our Kurdish troops in possibly worse conditions than they started out in. Now, the Sunni and Shiite conflict has been going on for decades. The Shia rebels are a military regime closely related to ISIS. And because of our U.S. removal from the conflict, BBC projects that ISIS will make a comeback in the future. And like I previously stated, this is a horrific and terrible action on the part of our president and his cabinet. While this may seem like an act of pacifism, like an act of peace, and on the surface it looks like we're sending our troops home, and that might be good for the U.S. However, if you look more deeply into the situation, terrorism is only going to spread from this, and it's not an act of heroism. In fact, it's an act of cowardice. The New York Times stated that this is one of the worst acts of foreign policy in the 21st century. To give a little background about the Kurdish and their military regime, they formed what's known as the Kurdistan Party, which is the PKK, and they have been strongly rooted in conflicts that span to Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran. They do not have a country. Kurdistan is a region that is located in Syria, but is not an official homeland. And they're fighting to gain a homeland, to gain peace, and to gain these freedoms that the U.S. stopped fighting for. Kurdistan is not an official region, like I said. It's part of northern Syria, and it's been neglected by our U.S. troops. It is imperative that the U.S. keep sending military aid to our Kurdish allies in order to combat the threat of terrorism and the threats that ISIS and the spread of ISIS has on our country. Studies have shown that already the Kurds are being slaughtered at a rate that is immensely higher than it's been before. And it's our duty, it's our constitutional duty to protect our allies and to fight for their freedoms, because they have served us and they have helped us take down these strong military regimes. I'd like to now transition into why the U.S. needs to stand its ground and to promote its efforts in the Middle East, and at the same time promote peace and promote the action of peace, because war and peace, they might seem like antonyms. However, our U.S. military is fighting for a strong cause, and it's defending the freedoms of people in the Middle East. And in conclusion, the act of President Trump to withdraw and remove these troops from the Middle East is nothing short of coward-like, and it's imperative that we keep our troops in the Middle East in order to defend those countries suffering from the actions of ISIS and from the threat of international terrorism. Thank you.